Hello, everyone, and welcome to Something Rotten. You asked for it, you clamored for it. Finally, we're doing the Something Rotten book season. We just finished reading In the Miso Soup, and we are on to my choice, a book that I picked sight unseen, The Haar by David Sodergren, 2022 independent horror novel. Blake Hester, have you learned what the Haar means?
Yeah, it's just like a thick fog. No one's been clamoring for this. Don't lie to our listeners.
No, I know, Blake. This season's gonna have like 12 listeners, so I just need to make it sound like people really want it.
I hope it has the most we've ever had so that you feel foolish. Lying and then saying only 12 people will listen to it.
I think that would be hilarious if it was just like, yeah, the people are sick of video games and what they want is two guys talking about short little novels.
Where'd you discover this book?
Literally, I don't even know like who said it or retweeted it or something. I remember seeing a tweet once that said, I think The Haar is the scariest book I've ever read. And I put that in my back pocket and I said, that sounds interesting. But just kind of, it was someone who I liked, and I was like, okay, well, I'll take their taste, whatever. And when we were picking books, I was like, that seems fun. It's pretty short. Let's try it out. I will say right off the bat, not the scariest book I've ever read, but also we're only halfway through it, so maybe it gets real scary.
I mean, I would say there's at least one moment in the book that could be scary if the Haar does not immediately ruin its tension with the word cock. But we'll get to it.
Cock, my cock!
Yeah.
I will say we are reading in this section up until the end of chapter 17, which is up to page 120. It is a pretty quick reading book. And then next week we'll talk about the whole thing.
Did you look into David Sodergren at all?
Not really. I mean, it's like if you look him up, he says like I wrote the book. The Haar.
He's kind of prolific. He's written a lot of these little indie books. They seem to be like by design, sort of callbacks to kind of nickel or dime novels, as it were. Even the cover is very like kind of reminiscent of those. And he's written probably like 10 or 12 books, all kind of various horror genres. Like he has like a giallo and I think like a biker exploitation book. This is his almost like Lovecraftian book. He's kind of interesting.
Yeah, you're right. If you go to his Twitter, he has a little like infographic with his 9 words that say just like they just have like a 2-word description. So it's like Maggie's grave, folk horror, night shoot, 80s slasher.
It's kind of cool.
And by God's hand you shall die. Italian style splatter. Yeah, I think it's fun. I think that it's like, you know, one of the things interestingly that like has kind of changed with publishing is for a while the way that Amazon worked was like you could write just kind of genre fiction. And I say this because do you know the YouTube video essay guy Joseph Anderson? Are you familiar with his work?
His name sounds familiar, but his name's also...
You would probably recognize. He makes, like, you know, pretty long videos and whatever. But he's talked about, like, he used to be a guy who I think self-described, like, wrote fantasy books with dragons on the cover. And he was never, like, super successful, but it was just, like, you could just write fantasy books with dragons on the cover. And, like, because of the way that genres were platformed and whatever, you could kind of like make a living off of that. And then Amazon like changed its algorithm and then it was no longer working for him. But I do think it's interesting to just be like, what is the version of writing dime store novels now? And it kind of seems like it's this.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Really one question and then kind of a comment. First off, Brandon Sanderson. Are those independently released novels, or is he like a real guy? That's a stupid way to put it, but you know what I mean.
No, it's an interesting question because he was going through traditional publishing, and then as far as I know, his kind of big breakthrough, or like one of the big things he did, was he had like I don't know if it was literally Kickstarter or Patreon, but it was like, hey, what if I just did this myself? Where people could just pay him directly, and it was like, you'll get 3 books this year. And I think that was kind of a way of subverting the publisher system. And that was super successful for him, but probably because he was already like enormously successful.
You ever read any of his books?
No. I know some people like him, and I know there's that takedown piece.
I read the Wired profile. I actually liked that a lot.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good.
There's kind of a history of authors figuring out how to subvert publishing rules. Famously, one of the reasons that Stephen King started publishing under his ghostwriter alias, which was, God, do you remember what that's called?
J.K. Rowling, I think.
Yeah. It was Richard Bachman. When he started writing Richard Bachman books, I think it was in part because he wanted to publish more than like his contract allowed him to. And so it's like, okay, these are by another guy. And similarly, like when Prince changed his name, it was like, can I get out of my contract to release more music if my name is no longer Prince?
How do you feel about, this is going to be a loaded question, but I've been thinking about it with respect to the Haar, because I have not read an independently released book like this in nearly 10 years for a very specific reason. But what is your relationship to kind of indie novels like this, if anything?
I mean, I really just don't have much connection to them. I think both of us have a lot of connection to basically very small boutique publishers. I mean, like Lost and Colt is an obvious one, but also I think of, something like Boss Fight Books, which is like, I can't imagine that they're selling a huge number of each title, but it is like a collective. But no, I am really, I just like, I'm not in the circles to find out what are good self-published or, like largely independent books. I kind of have those for games where I will sometimes hear rumblings of like, oh, this Itch.io game is cool. But I just like whatever circles there are that talk about those for books, I'm not in them.
I've read a few self-published books such as this. And some have been pretty good. Dan Reichert has a book called The Smartest Kid in Gifted Class, or The Dumbest Kid in Gifted Class. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really? And it's like a fiction novel?
No. It's like memoir-esque.
Oh.
Because he's had like such a bizarre life, and I think he knows it.
I would love to read that. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah, like it's pretty cool. He's written a few books. But I will say the thing that turned me off of this whole thing forever was in fact a memoir about a game journalist's life. I won't say the game journalist. It was not, in fact, Dan Reichert. His book was very good. But the book was so bad, I've not read an indie book since then. Like, picking up the Haar, like, I had to, like, kind of... You know what I'm saying? When you just, like, make something that makes such a bad impression on you, like, you have to, like, try to reprogram your brain after a while.
No, it's like you ate a food and then threw up after, and then you have to be like, okay, the next time I eat this, I'm not immediately going to get food poisoning.
And to be clear, not to spoil the conversation, I think the Haar is fine. I don't think it's like spectacular or anything, but compared to this book that turned me off at indie books, it is like the fucking Homer's Odyssey, man. It is so much better. But it was hard for me to kind of reprogram my brain. You know what I'm saying?
Hard.
Shut up.
Yes.
Shut the fuck up. But yeah.
No, what reading the Haar has kind of reminded me of is when I was a kid, I would go to the library all the time. And at some point I just started going to the young adult section, and I would literally pick books by thickness. It wouldn't be like... I'd probably look at the cover too and decide like if this is a cool cover or not. But it would just be like, this book is around 300 pages. That is the right amount for me to like read it. And if it's good, it can do something. And if it's bad, whatever, it won't take me that long. And I would just kind of go and like pick out 5 random books. And some of those were amazing. And then some of those were largely forgettable. But like, I wonder, here's my question. Do you think, I have been kind of thinking about the Haar as like similar to young adult level novels that I read, in part just because the writing style I think is fairly straightforward in a way that doesn't require you to like think that much. But is this just kind of like a pulpy adult book, or is it like borderline young adult? How do those things
I
exist?
definitely think pulpy is the right word for it, because it has like aspirations of deeper thoughts in there. There's a bit of like class warfare, and like there's some exploration of like getting older that's kind of interesting. But I also think at the end of the day, Sodergrin just wants to write about dudes getting disemboweled through the ass. I was like, that's fine.
Quite literally.
That's fine. That's totally, that's chill. Like he almost sometimes can't help himself, like to fall into kind of like, I use trashy not as a pejorative. Like I use trashy as a term of endearment here. Like
almost like a genre.
Yeah.
descriptor.
Like
it's just like that kind of thing.
Exactly. And I think once you get past the first 50 pages, because the first 50 pages, like you're really exploring kind of the main character, Mariel, and, her place fighting this billionaire and her experiences with aging. I think once you get past page 50 and the horror starts, over time, he starts to really lose some of that stuff that he establishes in the first 50 pages, including Arthur's accent seems to disappear after a while. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't. I didn't remember. Was he written like somewhat phonetically at the beginning?
He very much was. And then in the final few pages, Arthur just kind of loses his accent for a bit.
That's funny.
Maybe not entirely, but noticeably enough that I was like, why is he not saying Kinney or whatever the fuck? Yeah, Kinney, do it.
How much horror literature have you read in your time as a reader?
Interestingly, not a ton. It just doesn't speak to me too much. I mean, I should say I'm largely not a fiction reader. I'm like near exclusively a non-fiction reader. Mm-hmm. Notable exceptions, I would say, would be in the Miso Soup audition. Some of Murakami stuff.
Yeah, do you have authors? Yeah. So you like Murakami?
The Sluts by Dennis Cooper, I would say, is borderline a horror book and very scary at times.
Well, so did you not read fiction as a child?
I did. I just didn't. I guess now, if I'm thinking about it, like I remember those things like skeletons don't play tubas or whatever the fuck.
Oh yeah. Like Dracula's don't go surfing.
Yeah. And like Goosebumps.
I love those books.
I mean, I read plenty of Goosebumps, of course. But anyway, long way of saying not a huge relationship with horror literature.
I definitely read a good amount of it when I was a kid. I mean, I would just go through like anything that had 50 different entries in them. I would just chew through like French fries. And so like I've talked a ton about Animorphs, which has some like gory scenes, but it's not largely a horror series. But then I would do that with Goosebumps, and then with like Fear Street, which were the kind of older geared R.L. Stine books. And then there were some other kind of young adult ones that I don't remember as specifically, but I definitely connected with. And then
I'm sorry, are they making Fear Street? Are they doing movies of that now?
I think they are, or some kind of adaptations of those. And then when I was about 16, I had my first job, maybe 15 or 16, which I was working at the snack bar in my local JCC. During the summer. Great summer job. And most of that job was just sitting there because like the snack bar is not active every minute of every day. And that's when I started reading Stephen King, and I chewed through quite a few of his books. I mean, in terms of the total King oeuvre, it's probably still 25% or so, but like that represents a lot of pages. And I certainly read Misery and It and The Stand and The Shining and The Long Walk and all of those. And I still, it's like I still really enjoy King. I read Gerald's Game last year. I think that he is, boring observation, extremely good at what he does. And I kind of unavoidably compare a lot of horror fiction to him just because it's like he's kind of the name,
Also, like prolific writers like Sodergrin who are like kind of pumping shit out. Like I always think of like Stephen King's output, and like maybe it's not a fair comparison to compare any author to one of the greatest living authors, but I always think about that. It's like, how does this stack out up to someone with that kind of output.
Yeah, well, and it's like I don't even know if I would call King. He is greatest in terms of stature. Like I don't know if I would say that in terms of his writing,
Sure.
but it is unbelievable just his level of influence.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's I really like Just King Things, the podcast with Cameron. Do you have to do something? Oh, sorry. I thought you were like saying that like, oh, Reagan's.
No, I said yeah, as in I've heard of the podcast.
I really like the podcast Just King Things with our friend Cameron Kunzelman and Michael Lutz, who read books of Stephen King in publication order. But one of the things that they've talked about is like there were points in time when Stephen King was responsible for like 4% of book sales were just like Stephen King books, which is just kind of unbelievable. And it is like that compared or like, combined with like a fairly steady level of quality where it's like even the worst Stephen King books have interesting moments in them and have just like a baseline pretty high level of like writing talent. But yeah, just the ability to like pump things out. And a lot of authors would pump things out, and King is kind of the one who was like really broke through, became the airplane bookshop guy, and was not using continuous ghostwriters, which is, also something that like a lot of those big names now, it's like, okay, well, this is not actually a fucking Tom Clancy book or whatever.
I guess I'd forgot I have read Misery. And then I've read actually several of his non-horror books, like The Green Mile. I don't know if I've ever read the entirety of On Writing. I know I've read portions of it because it was part of a high school class. But I remember reading Misery after seeing the movie and then it dawning on me that there was like, in the movie she just breaks the guy's ankle. But in the book, she like cuts his leg off and cauterizes it. Do you remember that? Yeah, yeah. And I was like, that shit is hard as nails, bro. That book fucking rocks.
And I think one of the things that we will come back to thinking about King is like one of the things that I always admired about his writing is that like the smallest side character, he would still find a way to kind of give them a detail enough to make them seem like a person and not just like a tool of the plot. And I think one of the bigger criticisms you could say about the Haar is like the people that it cares about, and everyone else is like literally a cardboard cutout that someone is waving, being like, "You're gonna kill yourself."
Yeah. Also, just to finish my thought here, I think I read Misery and James Patterson's The Firm back to back the summer before my freshman year of high school. I think they were the required reading.
They were the required reading of your high school.
Yeah. I know I know for a fact Misery was. I don't remember if it was The Firm, but it was a James Patterson book. I write down every book I've ever read in a little journal back there. I could look through and see if it was The Firm. But I know for
bananas to me.
It was freshman year, so I read it between 8th grade and freshman year. I know for a fact. I read those back to back. And I could not tell you anything about The Firm other than I read it. I think it was The Firm. But goddamn, Misery made an impression on me. I remember her cauterizing that dude's leg because I looked up.
That's so crazy that they would have you read a book with like a guy who's going through like alcohol withdrawal and gets his legs chopped
Okay, so here's
off.
the thing I remembered recently. So you know the author Carl Hiaasen?
Yeah.
He wrote some children's novels, but primarily he was like an adult author, I believe, or vice versa, whichever way.
Yeah.
So my middle school library, they obviously had a bunch of his like kid novels. Was it Hoot that he wrote?
Yes.
Yeah. So like I read
probably Hoot and it, like kind of one word Flush was another one.
So I read those and really liked them, and then they stocked accidentally. I guess they didn't know he wrote adult novels. They stocked like Skinny Dip. And I think the sequel to Skinny Dip, and I remember reading them and be like, whoa, this is crazy. And my parents didn't really give a shit. They were like, whatever, like you're reading,
Yep.
It's fine. They were cool parents in that way. But I remember like the librarian returning it, her flipping through and being like, what is this? I was like, oh, it's a fucking cool ass book, bro. The lady gets her yiddies out. It's fucking awesome. And those books did not stay in the library very long after I read them. So
That's so, yeah, it's like my parents' position, and I think the position that I'll have if I ever have kids is just like, look, if you can stay interested in a book, you can read anything. Because, like, most adult books that have people getting their yitties out, as you say, are also just like, they're just like boring to a kid, you know, in a way that it's like, I just wouldn't finish it, you know, if I was like 12 and didn't have that experience. So my parents were like, yeah, anything you want to read, you can, because you probably are just going to give up before you get to anything like really inappropriate.
Yeah. My parents had a cool stance where it's like, we'll buy you literally as many books as you want as long as you read them. And I wonder if they would hold true to that, because I spend a lot of fucking money on books these days. I wonder if I could be like, Mom, Dad.
I need you to spend $90 on this artisan hardcover photography book. Now, before we jump into the Haar, did you ever read Andrew Clement's book, Frindle?
Yeah, bro. Of course I read Frindle. Are you out of your mind? I kind of look like the main character on the cover.
I still think about Frindle, one of the great works of childhood literature.
Are there like weird books from your past that you kind of think about and they're like so hazy that they're almost like a dream? Like there's a few books I've read the same summer as Misery. Weirdly, I don't know how I remember this summer so specifically well. But the same summer I read Misery and things. I read these weird books called like When I Was 5, I Killed Myself. You ever heard of this fucking thing? Dude, that book is fucking nuts. And I've like Googled it, and like of course it shows up, but it does not have a big cultural footprint.
Does it give you before you search it gives you a suicide hotline warning? So see if you need help.
Sorry. It in fact does not. Then there was like a book, and it wasn't the one that Andrew Reiner wrote with the exact same plot, where like a dinosaur was like a detective or a private eye, and I remember it being so fucking good.
My brain is just so designed around remembering specific scenes in things that like there are lots and lots of books that I read where I can remember like one thing from them that really stuck with me, even if I don't remember like the title of the book or anything else that happened in it. Sorry, I just want to say it is snowing outside in Durham, North Carolina, which is the first time that we've got snow in 4 years.
Really?
So this is very exciting.
I mean, obviously climate change and whatnot, but is like Durham just a particularly not snowy place?
Durham doesn't get snow. I mean, it's in the you know, like the mountains of North Carolina get snow, but yeah, it's far enough kind of south and central that it just doesn't. Makes sense. So it's very exciting. I'm sure Annie is like literally running around in circles outside. She's been talking about the possibility of snow all
Do y'all
week.
ever take like vacations to snowy areas?
I used to go to Minnesota every Christmas. I have not. I don't think I've gone to a snowy place intentionally in a while, which I miss. But I don't like ski or snowboard, so that kind of like X's out. That's a lot of snow vacations.
I really miss Minneapolis winters, if you can believe it.
No, I totally believe it. I love Minnesota winters.
Okay, anyway, the Haar, I guess.
All right, let's start reading the Haar. So
what do you mean start reading? You didn't do the required reading?
No, I was going to do it live.
That's great.
The Haar is a book. It is set in the town of Witch Haven in Scotland, and it stars Muriel Macaulay, who, Blake, when you hear the word Muriel or the name Muriel, what do you think of? Because I have one thing that
Courage
I think
the
of.
Cowardly Dog.
That's it. That's the one. So here are some things about Muriel. She's very old, which I think is maybe the most interesting thing about the book, is that most of its main characters are very old, and I think that's cool. She is one of the very few holdouts in her town, which is being slowly taken over by essentially a Donald Trump-esque character who wants to build like a golf course there. It's, you know, they're going around, they're buying up all the properties, they're giving people really good offers on their homes, and if not, they are kind of forcing them out through legal means so this big property developer can build a golf course or something. And she has a husband who is dead. Her husband, Billy, was a fisherman, and one day went out to sea, as he often did, and he never returned, and they found the ship empty, and no people were in it. And he's been dead for 20 years at this point. Like, it's
12.
been 12 years. So she's been a widow for a while, but the pain of his death is still quite fresh. And then the last thing that you need to know about Muriel is she finds a big jellyfish eyeball thing on the beach, and she picks it up and takes it into her bathtub, which I would say is the inciting incident of the book.
One of the best things about this book are Sodergrin's description of this fucking monster and its various states of being. They're so
you can
cool.
tell he loves it.
It's so cool. Like, when he wants to be, he can be a very descriptive writer in really cool ways.
Yeah. So what I mean, like, it is, we get a couple chapters of just like, oh, what are we gonna do? You know, everyone's selling their houses, whatever. And Muriel she's taking a walk along the beach. Is it after she is assaulted by that dude in the cave that she finds the creature?
It's immediately after. This is just for you. I don't think this should stay in the episode, but I let out some big farts just now, and I saw my little square light up.
Oh, you should keep that in. So she's going on a walk to the cave where Billy proposed to her, as this place that she has great memories. She hears a scream of pain, but it turns out it was not of pain, but of pleasure.
Easy to mistake those, I guess.
And a naked woman and naked man run out of this cave. Man noted with a big ol' erection. We've talked about dicks in this section at least 3 times within this book. Lots of dick talk.
Can we talk about penis?
Something Rotten loves.
Can we talk about penises real quick?
Blake, is it 6 p.m. on a weekday night? Because that's what we do every day.
It's Friday, it's fine. Specifically erections, as 2 penis havers who ostensibly have both had erections in our lives.
At some point.
And David Sodergren, don't want to make too many assumptions, but I'm gathering. I don't think you would stay erect running like that, because like a good way to get rid of like your quote unquote morning wood is just like walk around your room or house for a second. It'll just go right down.
I think that the fact that this man who we learned, they were hooking up in the cave is still erect is basically an indication of like what a shitty guy he is. That he's so unashamed of his behavior that he just walks out naked with a big old boner and is like, what the fuck are you doing here, old lady?
I'm not trying to cinema sins this book, but it did stand out to me. I was like, there's no way this man running and then beating an old woman nearly to death like he's gonna stay rock hard. But the book is like, oh no, he's up.
Yeah so she walks up, she sees them, he's like, hey, my daddy owns this land, I'm Baron Trump.
I'm the cock of the walk.
Some Trump child. Yeah. And one of the things in this book that reads a little roughly is how quickly normal characters just resort to extreme violence, which it is a pulpy book, it's not trying to be naturalistic, but like almost immediately upon seeing her, this naked young man like pushes Muriel down and kicks her in the ribs, breaking them.
I think like the quickness to violence in this book doesn't bother me, but like in the 3 very violent sections, and I would say an issue with the book entirely, though they're exacerbated by these sections, is its inconsistent voice. Like, one thing I keep thinking about is like, we follow Mariel, who, like, God bless her, she's not real, I can say whatever the fuck I want about her. She's like kind of a simple woman, she's kind of salt of the earth, and the book is mostly, it's a 3rd-person book, but it's mostly written to convey that, But then,
and it's like we know what she's thinking. It's in her head. It can tell us all of her motivations, all of that.
But then Sodergrin like will toss in like an attempt at a really flowery metaphor or whatever, and I was like, this doesn't work. This does not work. Mariel would never think, it was like a raindrop in the middle of an ocean, lost forever. She would never fucking think that. You have not established.
It was like tombstones toppling in an earthquake.
Oh my god, yeah. And I think when you get to these moments with the son and then the 2 separate sets of home intruders, it's really kind of their petulance that is so unbelievable to me. Not to cinema sense, I'm sorry. But like, we'll talk about one of the final scenes of this book, where it's like, these are supposedly professional killers, but they act like Beavis and Butthead, which I guess is funny in a way, yeah. But it's like, I guess just don't say, you know what I'm saying? Like, I really find the tone inconsistent, or the voice inconsistent a lot.
It's like, you know, Muriel's behavior through the book is like unusual, but I think it is largely, you know, part of the genre and explained. Of like, when she picks up this big jellyfish creature and brings it home to her bathtub, I'm like, I wouldn't do that, but, you know, Muriel in this book, I've got no problem with it. But it's like, we know so little about these characters. It kind of seems like they start to exist in a cartoon world when we just have these multiple scenes of people with like literally no compunction, essentially, like, in one case literally, and in other case, you know, almost fully, just kill a senior citizen for no other reason than the fun of it. It just kind of like, it doesn't, they haven't set this up as like a Mad Max world, which I think was kind of what I would need to believe that like roving bands of youths would just like kill an elderly person for the fun of it, which is what's happening here.
Yeah, and I think like there's really ways to like make the like extremeness of this book work, and it just doesn't always get there. I do think the final chapter works great. It's awesome. It's so good.
The monster extremeness is good, you know, and I think it is the interpersonal human conflict that often doesn't. But anyway, they leave Muriel on the sand. She struggles back to her home, and when she's almost there, she sees this big old kind of translucent, light-changing jelly creature like impaled on a rock.
It's Chaos from Sonic Adventure, bro. Straight up. That's what it is.
It says in the book, it was like Chaos from Sonic Adventure.
This says straight up, bro.
I really like this because I have not spent a ton of time on beaches in my life, but if you've spent any time at all on beaches, you have seen just a washed up jellyfish that really gives a just like, what the fuck is that? How could that be an animal in the same way that like a seagull is an animal? You know, this thing that just looks like a grocery bag full of guts that's like washed up on the shore.
Do you remember the first time someone told you like, oh yeah, certain jellyfish, they're immortal? You know, like, what is the fuck do you mean, bro? Like,
people say that about jellyfish. They also say that about like lobsters. I'm like, I don't know. It just seems like that always means we don't have a great way of telling how old they are.
Which one is the lobster the one that's kind of round, not the one that's long? Or is the crab the one that's kind of roundish and not long?
Wait, what do you mean? Just like the animal?
Yeah. What's a
crab? A lobster's a longer one. Crab is more of a circle.
You ever seen the crab that gets sucked into the under ocean?
You know, you posted this in our group chat probably like 3 times.
One of the wildest things I've ever seen. Folks,
crab that gets sucked into the pipe.
Yeah, just Google crab sucked in pipe. You can watch it. It's truly astoundingly gross.
But Muriel immediately kind of has some sort of empathy for this creature. She thinks that she hears it speak, which we kind of find out this thing can kind of just talk in your mind. It has some level of telepathy, and she touches it, which is something that I wouldn't do to a big jellyfish creature, but she does, and immediately gets this kind of like, I would describe it almost as like a morphine high. It basically like de-ages her. All her aches and pains go away. She feels really good. It's described like she's, you know, in one scene, like she's taken like an extra shot of brandy or something.
Sure, I read it a little more sexually than that, honestly. That might be just because I'm a pervert.
I think you're probably totally right in reading it that way. But yeah, it both like kind of heals her from being assaulted by the young naked man, but also endears her to it. And so she goes, gets her wheelbarrow, pulls it off of this rock that it's kind of impaled on, and just brings it home and puts it in her bathtub. And along the way, it just gives her a little puncture wound and licks up some of her blood, and that's how we learn that the creature drinks blood. Now, do you think, is this thing called the Haar? Like, is the monster also the Haar, or is we learn that the Haar is basically an icy sea fog, that it is a dense fog that rolls in off the ocean. And I don't know if the title is somehow a metaphor to make us think of like all of the book as in the Haar somehow, or if the Haar is like literally it's just like it's Dracula, it's the Haar.
I would say the book kind of forgets that it wants to use the Haar as a literary device after it shows.
Yeah, we kind of stop mentioning it.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this crazy fog rolls in, and then like once the monster rolls up, the book's very clear like, no, it just came from the ocean. Nothing really to do with that fog. It's all good on there. I guess her husband did kind of disappear in the Haar. But no, I think the Haar...
Yes, that's true.
Maybe causes... I don't know.
Yeah, it just kind of rolls up. One of my favorite Ray Bradbury short stories, he has a book called The Lighthouse, and it's about how this guy's in a lighthouse, and he's like, once a year... basically this dinosaur comes up and he plays a foghorn, and the dinosaur thinks that it's like the other existing dinosaur, and so they have this kind of like meeting, and it only happens once a year, and then he like turns the foghorn off and the dinosaur like destroys the lighthouse. Classic Ray Bradbury. But things coming out of the ocean, especially this, which we do learn is ancient, kind of like pre-human, and does give some indication of kind of having been alive forever. It is just like an unknowable thing from the ocean, which I'm a big fan of. I like when things are unknowable and from the ocean.
It has a big milky eye that we read about a lot. I love
has a big old eye. I will say
the cover art,
the illustration on the cover, doing a lot of work.
It's so good, man. It is so good.
It's like I almost wonder if he is doing the illustrations or something, because it's just so specific. Does it have it has a cover art thing.
It's somewhere in here it says the Trevor Henderson.
Trevor Henderson. But I think one of the advantages of being an independently published novel is like, if you're a big writer, you probably don't actually have that much control over your cover art. That is often picked by kind of publishers based on what they think is popular. This, clearly, he sent like a very detailed description of what the Haar looks like, and it was drawn.
Did we let you choose your cover art?
I picked the artist, and I gave him like, I'm thinking about these themes, and then he came back with, I wanted Killian to do basically whatever he wanted, and so yes, that's what I wanted. Okay, so the Haar lives in her bathroom. She it's for a couple chapters, it is just this kind of secret she has, where she has a friend named Arthur, who is another very old man who has kind of been in love with her for a while, but just in a kind of pining, unrequited way. He comes over. She's kind of freaked out because she doesn't even really know why. She's just like, I don't want to tell him about it. I want this to be my thing. So she doesn't tell anyone that she's got this jellyfish in the bathroom, and she is feeding it her blood. She's just kind of like cutting and doing it, which is again an interesting theme of this. In like, the book is not the book directly compares like her scarred wrists to kind of like that she's doing to feed this thing. I think it's an intentional connection to self-harm in some way. Like later in the book, we get these two Beavis and Butthead hitmen who are convincing her to like kill herself so she doesn't have to deal with it. And she like looks at her arm and she's like, wow, look at all these scars from feeding the Haar, which I think as the Haar starts to bring back memories of her husband and eventually kind of take on the form of her husband, it is kind of an interesting statement on grief to be like remembering, like the energy it takes to remember him and be back there is quite literally her cutting herself. I don't know. Is there like, do you think that is an intentional thing, and is it interesting to you?
It is interesting. I mean, I would like to think it's intentional. I mean, there's interesting stuff there with Mariel kind of forcing herself to look past all the ways in which the creature is not really her husband once he like takes its form. You know, the like little human eccentricities that it just couldn't learn from reading her mind or whatever. The way she like forces herself to look past that so that she can like trick herself into feeling happy with him again is like really, really well done.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's kind of jump to there. So, you know, things go on. More people are selling their house on the island, blah, blah, blah. Her friend Arthur is home intruded by a bunch of just dumb youths who basically just cover the whole house with gasoline, cover him with gasoline, stab him, set him on fire. It is a grisly scene. I think the description of him being burned is actually very good, but it is within this context of just kind of like, what? You know, just like 20-year-olds just go and they're burning a house down and they're like, hey man, there wasn't supposed to be anyone here. And then they just decide to burn him alive. You know, again, it stretches belief a little.
In the way that Frank's unexpected murder spree works, this one just doesn't. Like, it can't get the tone.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah, it doesn't. The book does not feel like it's been building up to a random collection of youths burning a man alive. But while Arthur is being burned alive, he manages to kind of stab one of the kids, who then stumbles down the lane into Muriel's house and is then consumed completely by the Haar. And this is where we get some of the best writing in the book, and also some of the writing where someone yells, my cock, my cock.
Man, it's so unfortunate because like Sodergrin is like really good at these gross descriptive sections, and like you're reading this kid be just like simultaneously boiled as it like, or not boiled, what is the word, like his flesh being eaten,
like
dissolved. Yeah. Like as if he is consumed by acid or whatever. And also you're like, he is being disemboweled and shitting himself, and then his organs are falling out, and it's like, it's fucking crazy. And you're like, all right, I'm buckling up. This is so gross. This is so intense. And then the chapter just ends with the kid comically screaming, my cock. And I was like, all respect to my man David. I think if I was not reading this for this podcast, I would have closed the book at that moment and not gone back to it. I thought it was...
It's just very goofy.
It is goofy, and it honestly, like, I hate to say, I think it ruins the tone of the chat, like the moment a lot.
It undercuts how good the body horror was,
and I think,
prior to this.
And I think he gets, like, he doesn't do that in the second big monster eating scene, luckily, though it's preceded by a chapter that is really rough. Yeah. But yeah, it's an unfortunate spot in the book where he just says, my cock. And I'm like, okay, whatever, dude.
Yeah. But I do, you know, this part, look, we've brought it up before. We'll bring it up again. Chuck Palahniuk's short story Guts.
I thought about it.
I did think about in this section. Yep. Because there is, so basically, I really like the kind of shifting physicality of what the Haar is, because sometimes it is, you know, if you think about like picking up a jellyfish, you're like, maybe my hands would just go straight through it, or maybe it would kind of hold together. And so it is kind of eating him from the legs up, and it climbs into his asshole, and he basically pulls it out, and while pulling it out, he literally disembowels himself. He just pulls out like all of his guts. It's awesome. Also made me think of, and this was on my mind because I just watched the behind the scenes, but you know, in The Substance, that dream sequence where she unzips the back of her cat suit and just all of her like guts fall out. I was also thinking about that.
I know the answer to this question is no, but have you seen Lucio Fulci's City of the Dead?
Nope.
Dude, okay, first off, put some respect on my Italian master, Lucio Fulci. Got a movie called City of the Dead, and in that, a woman pukes up her entire organ, like her all her organs, like, and they like stay combined, right? And you literally watch it like they build a mannequin's head and must put just like a pig's organs in their mouth, so it like spits out all its like small, large intestine, liver, kidney, lungs, heart. It's the coolest shit ever, dude.
I do love when it's just it just like being able to kind of identify the parts of organs, like one of the great things about like in Mortal Kombat, even like the first ones where you like punch a guy and you'd be like, there's a kidney, and just being able to like see all the little bits. It's always fun.
If I can find this scene really quick, can I get your live reaction on the mic to it?
Sure.
Okay, another part of this is I've actually never seen this movie, so I don't know why I gave you so much shit.
Oh my god. Okay, so you put some respect on his
There's
name.
a fan-made music video to the Samhain, whatever you want to call it, song "To Walk the Night" that I can't separate the two now. So I can't listen to the song without the video, and I have watched the scene without the song, and it just doesn't work for me. But anyway, you don't need to listen to the whole song, even though the fucking song rips. I'll tell you where to go. Go to about 2:27. I'll watch this too. This fucking rocks, dude. So much gnarlier than I even remembered it.
Oh, wow. There's just, oh my god. It's really just a close-up of a mouth as just like stuff pours out.
Dude, it fucking rocks.
Wow. And it just keeps kind of going.
Dude,
all right, that was very good.
It's awesome, man. Shouts out to Lucio Fulci. Now I'll make Jacob watch Zombie 2 for the bonus pod. Don't worry, everyone.
Making a lot of promises for this bonus pod. So this thing, it eats the guy. Muriel comes home because she had ran out when she saw that Arthur's cottage was like burning. She's devastated. She tells the cops. It's another bit of pretty clumsy writing in this. She tells the cops like, "Hey, this was murder," and the cops were like, "Ma'am, we're paid off." They're like, "Ma'am, Donald Trump has already given us a bunch of money, so we're not going to pay attention to this." Which, it's like, again, I respect the book's like anti-landlord, anti-kind of oligarch stance. Its heart is in the right place, but it is just like, it is so kind of obviously written sometimes. But she goes home. She's immediately like, what the fuck has happened? Because it is written basically as like a water balloon of blood has just exploded across her living room. That it's just like the walls, the ceiling are all just like dripping in viscera. But then she quickly forgets about that because she looks over and the creature in her bathtub is standing up and looks like her husband, Billy. And even says her name, says Muriel in Billy's voice.
I just shit my pants.
just like that guy did when it ate him. So here is the thing that I like maybe most about the book, just in terms of like little details, is it becomes Billy, but it does not know who Billy is apart from what it is kind of read from Muriel's memories. And so
it's so cool. It's such a cool idea.
It both is like, it's kind of the best he's ever looked. Like he has, kind of the hair that she would remember him having in like his 40s and a very strong chin and whatever. But also it's like, it is just, I think as the sequences with him go on, you kind of realize like, you don't want the person you love to be only the things that you remember about them because they suddenly become two-dimensional. That he kind of loses the ability to surprise her because the only things that actually exist within this version of Billy are like what Muriel's been thinking about for, however long she's been with him. And so it is like, she is kind of hypnotized and entranced and overjoyed, but then as time goes on, we as the readers, and Muriel probably, get this kind of hollow feeling of like, oh, it's not him. Like it looks like him, it talks like him, but just being this composite creature made out of memories is not actually the same as her husband coming back to life.
There's a really cool moment as you start to kind of like understand what the creature's name is Avalon, by the way. She names him Avalon.
That's right. Yeah. We haven't even said that. Yeah. Named after
Frankie Avalon.
What's the singer?
Frankie
Avalon.
As you're like kind of wrapping your head around the idea that Avalon is embodying the memory of Billy in her mind, there's a really good moment where he doesn't know how to tie his shoes because Mariel's never thought about him tying his shoes before. Which I thought was like a really cool touch and like a really kind of like simple way to like make you understand what Avalon is doing.
Yeah, that perfect thing of like, when you remember someone in your head, you're not creating like a picture based on what they spend time doing. It's like when I think about Annie, I'm not thinking like, and I love how she breathes in and out. That's just like something that happens when you're a person. But this creature is only made out of the things that she's thought about.
On the other hand,
and so it also,
Sam is a huge snorer. I do think a lot about how she breathes in and
that's coming back when Sam gets Avalon. What's also kind of interesting, though I don't know how much I like it, is that the creature knows that it is this jellyfish that came from the ocean and not Billy. Like, they have, even when it looks like Billy and they're kind of walking around and she's like, wow, I can't believe Billy's back, it's kind of like, yeah, I'm from the ocean. There are other ones of me. Maybe I had a partner at some point. And it's this kind of strange mix of like very frank conversations about I am a sea creature. I am not your husband, but also I look and sound so much like your husband that she is just kind of like, I'm willing to buy it, even with all of this evidence to the contrary.
I like it. I like the distance there. I like that Mariel has to force herself to like it, like she can't just like easily trick herself. Like she really has to think about it. I think that's cool.
Yeah. And then some extra good body descriptions.
Yeah, maybe the best part of the book thus far is when this fucker starts to melt.
Yeah, so what we learn is basically blood is his fuel, and he got a lot of it from the dude that he absorbed, but like that can't keep going, and she can't just like keep kind of giving him little driblets of blood from herself, because it takes so much energy to maintain this form of Billy, and so he just starts falling apart in really intense ways, and it's kind of like his like leg is like coming off, and she like tries to put her hand on him, and her hand kind of goes through him, and at some point he just face plants onto like a gravel walkway, and he comes up and his face is just like smashed in and half gone, and she describes like looking into the part of his face that is gone, and there's just like nothing in it at all. It's just like a black void inside his head. It's like, this is the part that you can tell he had the most fun writing, and it delivers. It's so good.
He mentions that in the face is stuck gravel, which I thought was an especially gross thing to picture.
Yeah. And then another bit that I like is she takes him home. She's kind of like throws him into the bathtub. It's like, blood, I need blood. And she has this mop bucket full of the blood that she like mopped up from the exploded dude in her living room, and she just like dumps the mop bucket into the bathtub, and so it's like overflowing. And I mean, you get the sense that it's like whatever her house looks like now is just fucking insane. Like, so many things have happened in it. So it just can't stay her husband. She can't give it enough blood. And so she basically starts to think, like, it needs another person. It would be really fucked up of me to kill someone to keep this going. She has enough clarity that she's not just like, I need to trick a guy into, giving it all its blood. But then, conveniently enough, that evening, Beavis and Butthead, the assassins, show up in her house. they're just two guys. They're American, interestingly, I guess. And they're like, hey, lady, hang yourself. Here's a noose. Just go hang yourself.
It's an abysmal chapter, man. Chapter 16 it's rough. I would say thus far the only section of the book I would call actively bad is just like it's again an issue of tone, right? Like the book is fairly straight-laced until it hits characters like this, and then all of a sudden it's a black comedy, but it can't handle that balance, right? And that's really what he's kind of trying to do here, is be funny while also, like, towing the line of offensiveness. And that's fine.
Yeah.
I just think the rest of the book is not written in a way that supports it, and these dudes just being, like, these oafish idiots who are just, like...
Yeah.
Horrible. And offensive and petulant, again, to use that word, vulgar, whatever. Like it lands with a thud for me. And
I mean, I think one of the reasons, I realized that, like, Stephen King so often uses, like, the devil is real and he's inhabiting this person is because, like, even the most evil, craven person, it doesn't read well for them to just show up and be like, hello, I'm evil. Go kill yourself, old lady. Like, it just rings so artificially like this is a thing that has to happen for the plot.
Also, I feel like the best stories about, like, that feature professional killers as antagonists, not like a John Wick or anything, are ones where they're not evil. Like, they're just doing a job that's so much... They're
just professional,
it's so much scarier to imagine. And instead, like, you literally get... Wayne and Garth busting through this fucking door. Like, it's so bad. But chapter 17 goes so hard that I can almost forgive it.
Yeah, so ultimately she does this weird kind of like I don't know, Marx Brothers routine with them or whatever, where she's like, how am I gonna hang myself? There are no rafters. I don't have any pills. And so eventually she's like, what if I slit my wrists into the bathtub? Don't look in there. But it is kind of, then kind of a cool, gnarly section where she just is like, all right, I'm doing this, and seems to fatally cut herself open into the bathtub. She falls in, and then next chapter, they're like, well, that was easy. I'm glad that old lady just killed herself. And then the horror comes out and devours both of them. Avalon comes out in a rich tapestry of viscera.
So there's a guy watching himself be in a mirror be murdered by the Haar as it sticks an appendage down his throat. It unhinges his jaw, gives himself a fucking Chelsea smile, sticks an appendage down his throat, and then in one of the grossest descriptions, he says it's as if you took a pillow sheet and turned it inside out, squeezes from inside his belly, and pulls his skin off from inside. It's fucking awesome.
It reminded me of the Calvin and Hobbes that I think about pretty often, where he sneezes his head inside out. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's great. And there's another thing where, like, one of the guys, one of the only kind of really solid physical descriptions we get of Avalon while it is in just goo form is it's got this big eyeball, and the guy, like, tries to grab its head, and the eyeball, like, bursts open into acid and is just, like, spraying on him and just melting these guys. And it's great. It is, like, again, if this is a dime store pulp novel, these are the scenes that you're reading it for, and, like, they're great. And I'm almost glad that the book doesn't spend as much time on the characterization of these goons or whatever, because it's like, ultimately, we're just here to see them pulled inside out, and that part does deliver.
Also, I'm so sorry to do this. Calvin and Hobbes rocks, man. Fuck.
Never apologize for that.
I wanted to see I looked up the strip you were talking about. I was just like, then I just started clicking on other little strips and be like, oh, that's pretty funny. I wonder what Jacob's talking about. I mean, I'm in a different world right now.
People talk about but like that Sunday comic where it's like it's in color and it's the big strip where he is imagining the T-Rex piloting the fighter
so
jet.
sick,
like
dude.
One of the hardest illustrations.
We have a couple of the like softback collections here. And it's like I need to just go drop a Benjamin, if you will, on the complete collection. It's like
the full collection. Yeah.
God, I'm looking at it right now and
no, I want that. Or the ones where he's playing a game with Susie, but it's drawn like they're in like a noir.
Yeah.
You know, when like they're both adults and he's like, what do you mean you can't get anything for the kitchen? And it's like him imagining what adult entertainment is supposed to be like. It's so good. Anyway, that's where we finished with the Haar. The dudes dissolve into goo, and Muriel has found a way of kind of feeding this thing more blood, is finding guys who are morally disposable and disposing of them.
Yeah, definitely. Oh my god, the hardback version of the collection is $225. Ugh. Anyway, definitely interested to see where it goes. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, me too. I think it's like we have been, I think, like both kind and unkind to this book in ways that it deserves. But like at this point, I want to see how it ends. Like I'm interested. I am both kind of, it's like clearly Muriel won't just be able to get her lovely husband back, and so something's going to break with that. But I also assume that we're going to get to see Donald Trump stand in, get dissolved by a big goo monster. Yeah. And like, I can't fucking wait.
Yeah. All right. Shouts out to David Sodergren. Come on the show. This episode's a little shorter than usual, so with a few extra minutes, just hang out here, I think. Did you see my little microphone toy? So pretty cool.
Yeah, I wondered what that was.
I got a little chair too. Got a little fold up.
Is this just to be like, this is where I podcast and here's a miniature podcast setup?
No, I got this from a gachapon machine in Japan, and I found the little egg, with it in there sitting in my room as I was like cleaning up today, and I was like, oh, and I like put it together. It was really fun. Now it's just sitting here. No, but I was hoping with our final minutes. Did you watch that video I sent in your DMs? Not to you, but just because I needed quick access to the link.
No, but I can watch it right now.
Okay. I just think you're going to enjoy this. So, I mean, before you watch the video, make sure you see the reference photo.
So I'm going to describe this. It's the tweet says, crowd kill of the year goes to this guy hitting a dude with a John Lennon. The John Lennon being referred to is the picture that I'm sure we've all seen, which is if you search John Lennon walking like a jackass, you'll get the picture of him with like the big wide stance, and it looks like, I don't know, like a mosh pit. What's just this kind of like,
killing is a hardcore thing where you intentionally target people of the crowd. That's what is happening.
Just this guy walks up with the fucking John Lennon walk and then roundhouse kicks another guy in the jaw.
It's one of the funniest things. I mean, sorry about that dude's jaw. I've seen many a good man go down by a crowd killer, but that's the funniest shit I've seen.
All right,
folks at home,
we'll need to remember to put this in the description.
Yeah. Or look it up. The Twitter. The tweet just says crowd kill of the year goes to this guy hitting a dude with the John Lennon. I'm sure it'll come up. I think if you also just Google like John Lennon mosh, it comes up. I had to send it to you because I don't have Twitter on my phone. And I wanted it to send it to Sam because her favorite band is the Beatles, and I knew she would find that funny. So I just thought you should watch it since you had a gold nugget in your DM.
That's so funny. I was like, in ordinary circumstances, I would have watched it, and this time I was like, I don't know, Blake just needs to save a link. I'm not gonna look at this.
To be clear, like he kicks the shit out of this dude. Like the dude goes down. It's so gnarly. Oh man,
well,
I love that.
I hope everyone enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for next week where we will finish the Haar. We will hopefully have a lovely guest to talk about it with. Until then, thanks for listening to what I'm sure is our most listened to season ever, Something Rotten Books. For Blake Hester, I'm Jacob Geller, saying, my cock! My cock!
You can't say that, bye!
ため息の出るようなあなたの口づけに甘い恋を夢見る乙女心よ金色に輝く熱い砂の上で裸で恋をしよう人形のように日に焼けた頬寄せてささやいた約束は二人だけの姫ごとため